There's a building in Shenzhen that produces more iPhones in a single day than most countries manufacture products in a year. Inside, 350,000 workers move like synchronized machinery. The factory runs 24 hours. It has its own fire department, its own hospitals, its own city within a city. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. The math behind this place explains why your country probably can't compete anymore. This is the story of how China didn't just build factories. They built an economic weapon so effective that trying to replicate it anywhere else might actually be impossible. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. When people talk about Chinese manufacturing, they say cheap labor. That was true in 1995. It hasn't been true for 15 years. The average factory worker in Shenzhen now makes about $800 a month. That's more than Mexico, more than Vietnam, sometimes double what workers make in Bangladesh. So if it's not cheap labor, what is it? It's the cluster. Here's how it actually works. Imagine you want to manufacture a smartphone. Not design it, just build it. You need about 200 different components. The screen, the battery, the camera modules, the tiny screws, the circuit boards, the aluminum casing. In the United States or Europe, those 200 parts might come from 200 different suppliers spread across dozens of countries. Lead time? Maybe 8 to 12 weeks if you're lucky. In Shenzhen, all 200 suppliers are within a 50-mile radius. Lead time? 48 hours. This is what economists call agglomeration effects, but that term is too sterile for what's actually happening. What China built is more like an industrial neural network. Every factory is a node, every supplier is connected, and the whole system gets smarter and faster the bigger it becomes. Let me give you a real example. Apple decides they want to change the iPhone screen at the last minute. Different glass, different adhesive, different tolerances. In a normal supply chain, that's a 6-month nightmare. You have to redesign, reorder materials, retool machinery, test everything again. In China, they did it in 96 hours. The factory manager got the specs at midnight. By 6 a.m., the glass supplier 15 miles away had already started production. By noon, the adhesive manufacturer had reformulated their compound. By the end of day 2, the assembly line was running the new design. This actually happened in 2007, and it's the moment Apple realized they probably couldn't manufacture iPhones anywhere else, even if they wanted to. Now here's where the money gets interesting. Between 2008 and 2019, China produced more cement than the United States used in the entire 20th century. Most of that cement went into factories, roads connecting factories, and cities housing factory workers. The total investment? Somewhere north of $6 trillion. But here's the uncomfortable question nobody wants to answer. Who paid for it? The simple answer is Chinese banks, funded by Chinese savers, directed by the Chinese government. But the real answer is more circular and more strange. The factories generate export revenue. The export revenue gets deposited in Chinese banks. The banks lend that money to build more factories. More factories generate more export revenue. And the loop continues. It's a flywheel. And for about 25 years, it spun faster every single year. The problem with flywheels is they're very hard to slow down, and they're even harder to stop. By 2015, China was producing more steel than the rest of the world combined. More aluminum, more solar panels, more electric vehicle batteries, more of basically everything that requires a factory. Prices for all these goods started falling globally, not because of innovation, because of oversupply. Here's the weird part. Oversupply should kill profits. It should bankrupt companies. It should force factories to close. But in China, many of these factories kept running at a loss. Still running today, actually. They're kept alive by cheap credit, local government subsidies, and the political reality that closing a factory that employs 50,000 people creates 50,000 angry workers. So the math becomes absurd. You have factories producing goods at a loss, financed by loans that might never be repaid in order to maintain employment and social stability. At a certain point, you're not really running an economy. You're running a very expensive machine that produces products and jobs in equal measure, and calling it capitalism. Western economists have a term for this: zombie companies. China has thousands of them. Now zoom out to what this means for everyone else. If you're a manufacturer in Ohio or Manchester or Munich, you're not competing against Chinese wages. You're competing against an entire system that's optimized for one thing: volume at any cost. Your factory needs to be profitable. Their factory just needs to keep running. It's not a fair fight. It was never designed to be. And here's the darker implication. For 30 years, the rest of the world outsourced manufacturing to China because it was cheaper. What we actually did was allow them to build the most concentrated industrial capacity in human history. We paid them to do it with every iPhone we bought, every toy, every piece of furniture. Now, multiple countries are trying to reshore manufacturing, bring the factories back home, The US passed the CHIPS Act. Europe has similar plans. Everyone suddenly wants domestic semiconductor production, domestic EV batteries, domestic everything. There's just one problem. The cluster doesn't exist anywhere else. You can't rebuild 40 years of industrial concentration in 5 years. You can't replicate the supplier networks, the worker expertise, the institutional knowledge, the sheer density of it all. You can subsidize it, you can mandate it, but you can't conjure it into existence. China spent trillions of dollars and 4 decades building the machine. The rest of us are just now realizing we might need one too. So, here's the question nobody has a good answer for. What happens when the world's factory decides it doesn't want to just make things for everyone else anymore? What happens when they start making things for themselves? The factory in Shenzhen is still running, still producing, still humming along 24 hours a day. And somewhere inside that building, someone is probably making the device you'll use to watch this video. Think about that for a second. The system doesn't need to beat you. It already has.